Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. This is Denise from the Medical Staff Office, and today for Medical Staff Education, we have Brenda Taves, who is going to talk to us about Meditech, and she has already shared her screen, so I will just go ahead and let her get started, and she can take questions as she's willing, and I'll try and help monitor those as well.
Okay, so Denise, let me know if you can't hear me. It looks like we could before. The first part, I'm going to try to focus on maybe two different things, possibly three. The main part of the presentation will be widgets and how they are set up standard, and then also how we can do some customization and personalization. Then I will also talk a little bit about the problem list and some of the questions that have come up somewhat recently. And the third item, hopefully if we have time, is to show the surgical case list and case grid. This was something that there was a Zoom sent out fairly recently about that, but in case people were not able to see that, I can demonstrate that. So with widgets, this is the main screen of the EMR of the chart. And this section right here under the summary tab is also called the summary widget region. Over here on the right-hand side is the reference region, and there are widgets that can be added to that as well. The reference region stays up, as you know, all the time, regardless of which tab you are looking at in this section here. If you want to see, oh, and also there is a standard template for each provider or provider groups that is set. And if you haven't done any personalization, there's a template. So this provider that I'm using is my test provider. I've done a lot of customization, so it looks probably different from if you've never done any of that. But there is a standard, and we do that behind the scenes. Sometimes we update that, and we need to also work out that if we update the standard, will it update the custom? And we'll be working on, as we need to on that. If you want to look at what's on this standard template before going into customize, you can click on this arrow right here, and it collapses all of the widgets. So you can just see at a glance what's on the basic front page. Same thing over here. I click on this arrow and it shows which widgets are over here. To customize, we go into this gear and it brings up this screen. So there's a lot of, so this shows the summary, that first page. This shows the reference region. If I start customizing here in the summary, I will have to save and then come back in if I want to do the reference region, because once I start customizing here, this goes gray. The first thing that I do with a new provider is I add the My Widget. That is not on the standard. Maybe we should make it on the standard. That's an option I hadn't just now thought of. But to add anything, you come to this search bar and you just start typing. Now this one will not show up in the search because it's actually on my template. So if I already have added a widget, it will not show up in the search. But normally, if I had not added this My Widget, it would show up. I could click on it and it would normally come down to the bottom. Then when I just click once, you can see there are arrows here that I can move either all the way to the bottom, or I can move it to any place that I would like. I can remove a widget if I don't want to see it. I can move it over to the other side by clicking on either of those arrows. The edit button here is only for editing the title of the widget. I have never really suggested that that be done, but you can. I don't, yeah, that's just a personal preference. So you can add widgets to either side. You can do that. There is a list of standard widgets that can be added. I will be sending a list of those to the medical staff office, and they will send that out. I want to kind of go through and have a description of those, and I did not have a chance to get that done this morning. But I'm going to show you some that I have suggested. First of all, like the My Widget, I will show you actually how to add data. Did somebody say something? No. So some of the consistent widgets, so My Widget, I suggest that maybe you can add that if you'd like. Another one that is, depending on your practice, is there is a blood bank widget. And so you can see I just started typing blood. Sometimes less is more. And I always want to choose, most often, anything that has web EHR in the title, because that is signifying it's meant for this widget. So I click on that and you can see it went to the bottom. We will look, I believe this patient in test does have some blood products, possibly not. The thing to know about the widgets is if the patient you're looking at does not have any data in that widget, it will be blank. However, your widgets are set up for any patient that you go into. So if it's possible that one patient may not have that data, but then for the next patient who does, it will show up automatically. So what the blood bank widget will show is if they've been transfused, which transfusions, what was transfused, which date, etc. So that can be a helpful one. I'm going to add some of the other ones over here. Another one, there is a legal indicators, which has advanced directives information. I'm not going to add that one this time, but you can, and that has, well, I'll go ahead and add it. But there's also a custom one, and I'll talk about custom ones a little bit later. There is a custom one currently built for just the advanced directives information. And so I'm going to add that one so that you can see, and that would show what shows up. Another one that I'm going to add is immunizations. So the benefit of doing this as a widget is that that data you'd otherwise have to go to another tab and click and kind of search a little bit deeper, whereas this brings it right to the forefront. And the final one that I was going to add, but it's already added to this patient, is surgeries. Because this patient, it was a test patient, but did have a surgery, you would be able to see which surgery. So I'm going to save, and then we'll look at some of the data and how it appears. So I added, scrolling down, whoops, so that surgeries widget, you can see this patient had colonoscopy and EGD, and you're able then you could go in and look at whatever's information is there. Anytime there's a note or a document, you can just click on it right from the widget. The other ones that I added down below here, so blood bank, yes. So this patient did not have transfusions, but it does show the tests that were done possibly that might have been needed if there had been a transfusion. The other thing to note about these widgets is that any of them that have a link, a line under the title, can be clicked on and then it takes you to more data. In this case, what it does, it takes you and you're like, where am I supposed to go? It actually, this is where you would normally have to look up that blood bank information, the other clinical tab, and the blood bank summary, and then you would click on this information. Whereas it's right there on the summary, on the front page for you, and you can see the basic data as you need to. That is the case for a lot of these widgets, is that they show the most recent, they might show the last 24 hours. You can still go to the tab of provider notes, for instance, to see all, but if you want to just see part of it, you can see it right there in the front. The immunizations that I added, okay, legal indicators. So this shows the difference between, here's a widget that shows all of the legal things and the advanced directives. And so there's just a part of that that has the advanced directives. Whereas the custom widget just shows the information on the advanced directives. So there's just that difference if you want to choose. This patient does not have immunizations, but there is so again, I'm going to click here to show how this actually brings up this immunization overlay. If there was data there, if the patient had had immunizations recorded, it would be listed there. Surgeries, yeah, we went over surgeries. So those are some of the standard widgets that can be added. I will send that list as you see, and you can take a look, and you can always, if you say, oh, that wasn't helpful, just go to your gear, say, I don't really want to see this one anymore, and click X. So the next topic is My Widget. You can see that right here. There is some data that's already been added. The purpose of this is if there's just maybe a few pieces of data, specific things that you would like to see for every patient right up front. Some of these, blood pressure is repeated in vital signs, but it was an example. And there are sometimes helpful information that's buried in the nursing assessments. In this area, the Nurse Allied Health tab, we know that there's a lot of pieces of data that are sometimes hard to find. So some of the people that I've worked with, that I've seen that use the My Widget is for very specific pieces of data. And one of these, like number of bowel movements, I'll show you how to add that, number of unmeasured voids. Some of the pediatric or newborn, there are some number of urine diapers that they can, instead of having to go search for that data, they just put it in My Widget and then they can see that right away. Again, just like with adding a whole widget, if you've added a piece of data that does not exist on a certain patient, then it won't show up. It will not even be listed. The way to add this is to find the data somewhere and I'll show you some examples. We'll do a right click. I'll just do pause. So I did a right click. Normally you're not right clicking in Meditech, but here you do. And you get a box that looks like this. Then what you'll want, and you can also see what I've already added to my widget. I just click on the word widget, and then it should be pretty instant. I saw sometimes there's a bit of a delay. That should not happen usually. Right there, I've got my pulse rate. So here's some ideas of some possible things that could be added to my widget. So the number of bowel movements, I'm like, well, where do I find that? I don't want to have to go search up here. So this search chart comes in very, very handy. Sometimes it can be a challenge to find it. Feel free. I will leave my phone number at the end of the meeting. So a lot of you know that phone number to call us. If you can't find something, we can help you find it. But I'm going to just start typing number. And this patient might not have it. I might have to go to another, I'll have to go back to my other patient. I'm going to go back and forth between a couple different patients. So I don't see that on him. All right, I'm going to actually go out of this chart and go back into my other patient. I'm going to digress just a little bit, and I want to make sure that all of you with our recent upgrade have noticed this recently accessed header as an option. This is what it might look like if you've never clicked on it. So it's behind the workload, but it's a really nice feature for being able to quickly find your recently accessed patients. You can go back and forth by clicking like this, and I'm using that to then go to my other patient very easily. You can still use the recently accessed from the lists, but this is just one other option. Okay, so for this patient, if I type number of bowel movements, I click right here on that line, and I can see this is, obviously this is not totally realistic because there would be more data there. But I want to go somewhere to that result, and I'm going to right click on that number 1. I click on the My Widget, and then when I close, that has now been added. So for any patient chart that I open, I will see this data. I'm going to remove, oh, I'll do that a little bit later. Another item that has been added sometimes relates to pain management and PCA. Like how many times have they pushed the button? So I knew that this was PCA number of attempts. You may not know that, or you may. And so click on that, right click on the widget, click on the word, close, and my PCA number of attempts has now been added. You can add lab items, and the way to add the lab items is you can do that from a widget. Now, in this case, this patient doesn't have any current labs. Well, they do. So I would go to add a lab, for instance. I would find the data wherever, and as long as I can do that right click, I'm going to add WBC to my widget. That was already added. Okay, let's do another one. Let's say platelet count. There we go. So that's how you can, if you do have, for instance, lab work that's already, you can find that data from a widget that already exists, but in this case, this patient did not have anything in the last 24 hours. So most likely a patient you're working with, you could just go down to the lab or INO in the last 24 hours and do a right click from a widget. You can go from one widget to my widget also. EKG, that there was a way to add on this on the other patient that I had up. You can, if you can find that in the diagnostics, anything that is any report that's in these sections can be added by right-clicking. Probably best to right-click on the paper report icon. As long as you can get that box to come up, you can add that anything to my widget. If you don't get that box, then that piece of data might not be eligible to be added. And there are a few of those things. So one thing about scanned documents, I'm going to go back to my other patient. If you would like to add, so in this case, I did add EKG to my widget for this patient. I used admission face sheet. That may not be a realistic example. For sometimes there are in the provider notes section. No, sorry. To other specialty where there's a lot of scanned documents. You can, so what I have found is this is what you would get if you right click and you're like, oh, well, that can't be added, but she said I could add scanned documents. The scanned documents is a brand new being able to add them from, as with our upgrade, but you have to add them from another widget. So in this case, I was able to add admission face sheet to my widget because, or anesthesia record, because it was on another widget. And we're working with Meditech on that to possibly, I think it's coming in a future upgrade, like not months away, but it's coming up that we would be able to actually get it from that other section. So while I have this box up, I want to show how you can then edit the My Widget. Like you have something on there and, oh, I don't really want that. So when you just would go to where you can get that right click, you get this box, and then click this green edit button. Here it shows all of the things that I've added. I can move them down. I move blood pressure down, I'm going to actually get rid of the admission face sheet by clicking the red X. And then to get out of this, I just click outside the box somewhere. And you can see then that the admission face sheet is gone. So that's a real quick snapshot. I suggest, like, as far as adding to my widget, it's just finding the data and right-clicking and seeing if you can add it. Another thing to note is that my widget also, when you add it, it automatically gets added to the reference region, so that if you are looking at something else over here, you could still have this information available as needed. So that's one thing to be aware of. I don't know if there are any questions. I was going to talk a little bit more about how to request custom widgets. But are there any questions for that?
Dr. Hames wrote one asking does this have a link to Chirp?
I don't think that it has. We haven't been able to incorporate links yet into a widget. I believe that is coming because we actually saw documentation about that in our upgrade testing, but we were told that the interface is not available. The interface to Chirp is, we know that, but to add it as there's supposed to be a way that you could add a widget with a link like that. So I believe it's coming, and otherwise you can, I believe, I don't know if that's one of the external links or not, but yeah, hope that answers the question. Not yet. Any other questions? Okay, custom widgets. Some of them that we have already built are based on certain groups of labs. I don't really have, I'm not totally sure what they're called. I'm just going to describe some of them. In some cases, we've built widgets for certain questions. Like Dr. Jerry Hostetler asked us to build a widget for some of the urology lab data that would show correct function. I didn't build it, but it was specifically some labs that he asked us, and so we just went in and built it in the background, and then he could add it. I'm not sure what it was called. No, okay. I think we had built a physical therapy custom one. That advanced directives one that I showed you was a custom. So we can take maybe one question out of an assessment, or 2 or 3 questions out of an assessment, rather than every single question that the nurse has asked. Maybe there's 2 or 3, maybe related to pain management. You might just want to see for the PCA, number of attempts, or volume infused, or something like that. We can try anyway. We can usually build with the nursing assessment, we can build those questions, tell you what it's called, and then you can add it as a widget. We can do INO data. We found that for some of the newborn, the INO does not always show the questions like number of unmeasured voids. Doesn't show up in the INO widget right here, right away, because they may not have documented intake or output yet. And so those questions called number of unmeasured voids, the urine diapers, etc., for newborns, those questions don't show up in this widget unless there's like intake or output documented. So though we could find those queries, we could add them to a My Widget or a custom widget, and then they are available even though, because they're there and you don't want to have to go digging for them. That was another one. Reports, I don't think we've done a lot where you can do a custom widget just for a certain type of report, but it's possible. The most of the ones we've done are either labs, a group of labs, or the queries, the questions from nursing assessments. So overall, that is the the widget presentation. And like I said, I will make that list of the standard widgets available. And otherwise, you know, you can feel free to call us if you have questions. So I'm going to move into the problem list questions or information. And I'm going to start by adding problems. Now, the note about problem list is you can actually get to the problem list in multiple ways. And that has been made more, it's been made a little more easy since not this last upgrade, but the previous one, in that wherever you click on problems, you will get the same box. So I'm just going to click here, and I see problems, and I see medical history problems. And they're always together. So no matter where I access the problem, either history or problems, I get this same box. It is true that sometimes this add to document is not seen, and sometimes it is. They have added, with this last upgrade, the ability to add to a document has, it has increased the ability to add to document. You can see that, I'll talk a little bit later about this, when you are working in the documentation, by checking the box, those problems will show up on that document. But just a few things about adding or editing or just viewing this. You may not ever need to get into this detail, but for instance, you can open up more data by clicking on the name of the problem. And first of all, just to show there's like an audit to show who entered that first problem the first time, when it was last edited. It shows the ICD code if that is not part of the documentation, the status, the category, etc. This add to history and move to history is a way for you to, if you want that problem, now they do show prostate cancer, they may have been added at different times. If you're adding, but if you have just added it once and you now want to have this show up in both places, you can click the add to history. If you want to change this active problem to a history problem, you can click move to history, and then it would go over here. When you're adding a new problem, you have the ability to do that right away. Let's see, this patient does not have diabetes anywhere. So just to show you what that looks like. This is what comes up. Now, I have also made that a favorite, and I didn't search in my favorites, but that's what the yellow star means, that I've made diabetes a favorite for myself. But here, I can add this as an active problem or just a history problem or both. And so that's an option just to show you how that can be done when you're adding new problems. With patients that have been here a long time, those problems are going to come across, and they may have been added before we had the ability to add them in both places. So it sometimes is like this, where it's been added at a different time. And so here, with the history side, if you could either add this to active, which would kind of be a duplicate, that's not a good example, or removing from the history just removes it. It says it's no longer a problem for that patient. So that's kind of how you can add the problems, put them in the correct place. I did neglect to mention how you can make them be resolved, and that gets done by, let's say, here, so this is a good example. I did not try that. You click here in the status, and that's where you can change from acute to chronic, resolved, ruled out. You can delete them, make it inactive, etc. It's by going into that problem. So I did want to show, now let me just look. Okay. The other place that you can get to the problem list is from this tab, the History and Problems tab. So either, again, no matter where you click, you're going to get that same box right there. whether you clicked into history, as I did, or problems. You'll get that same one. You still need to get into that box in order to edit it by clicking on the edit box. Now I'm going to actually go back to my other patient. Within a document, the problem list is done through the assessment and plan section. And this is the only place that you can prioritize the problems is within a document in the assessment and plan section. So I clicked on that header, and if I can either click here to see the existing problems, or I can click into the, and this is where I will prioritize, or I can click into the add problem. And in this case, shows the add to document. I could add new problems. I could uncheck if I don't want that to be part of the document, but I do. So we're going to actually add a new problem, and I'm going to use my favorites this time. So by clicking on this arrow, it shows these are the different favorites. In this case, I'm going to add this problem to both, and you can see then it is added. And now it automatically gets added to the bottom, but maybe I want this to be the second problem. I can move these up or down. I can remove them by clicking on this X. That will give a box that says, do I just want to delete it from this document, or do I want to delete it from the problem list and this document? So I have the choice to do that. I'm just going to cancel that. So that is how you can, the changes that you make here in the document will stay for when you're doing your next document. But this within a document, a progress note or history and physical, or wherever you have this assessment and plan section, is the only place that you can prioritize. So I'm not going to save this document. One thing that I want to note related to prioritization of problems is this issue of what shows up right here. There are two, this has become an issue. This is the provider notes tab, and this does not always show the prioritized problem that you did in your document as the first problem. We have reported this with Meditech. We've talked with Meditech about this, and we're still working on it with them. It's currently alphabetical, and it doesn't always, as you can see, reflect a problem that I may have added to a new document. It will eventually, but currently that did not update right away. So as far as looking at the active problems, this may be where you go to view. It isn't the most accurate. The most accurate is when you can either go to the problem list, which will at least have all of your problems, to look here, over here at this link, or, and in this case, my new document is there. So that's just a question that has come up. We are, like I said, we are still working with them on explaining how we feel that this is important, that we could have the top priority and have them prioritized, or yeah. So we're working with Meditech on that. Any questions? That's basically what I was going to show for the problem list. Are there questions with this?
Dr. Kornikavich had a question about adding care coordination to my widget, if that was possible.
Let's see, I think so. I thought that as far as the assessments, yeah, I think there's actually a custom widget. So let's see what it adds. I don't know, that probably, I'm going to save it, but I'm going to go to the other patient because they will probably have data, whereas this patient probably doesn't. That's also an example. Yeah. So here's a way that this is adding, I've added every single care coordination assessment that this patient had documented. If you just want a certain ones, that might be a different custom document, a different custom widget. So I don't know if that answers your question. Here, I just clicked on it, then it shows that assessment. I click on this and it shows that assessment. Hope that answered the question. So the reason, so there you have to know, I did know that their assessments or their, that widget started with ACC, acute care coordination. So sometimes the naming can be a challenge as far as knowing what to call things. Any other questions? Okay. I'm going to go next to show the surgical case grid. From the benefit of this is that, and it mainly would apply to surgeons, so, or anesthesia providers, but it's a way that you can see, you could find patients more quickly, possibly without having to have them assigned to you. So from this rounds list, in the show all list, now I've looked at the surgical cases, it's right here, surgical cases. It comes up and it looks like this. Actually, it will make a little more sense in live, but I'll try to find a date that has some data. I'm not assigned to any patients, or my fake provider is not assigned to any patients today. That's what this initial view looks like. But if I click on the grid icon, and then I'm going to go to, I know that there's, this brings up the whole schedule. And I'm going to choose a date in July that I know has some data. Okay, so now I'm seeing some test patients. I can, if I just want to see a specific section, I can say I just want to see OR or I just want to see CVL. I could uncheck the select all and just see maybe those sections. I'm going to select OR. And then it only shows me those operating rooms. I can scroll if I need to see the other ones. And then, so I find the patient I want, I click once, and this brings up what they're having, who the different providers might be, and I can get directly to the chart from here. Now I've accessed that patient, and they will now show up on my recently accessed list. So it was a nice, easy way to get to that patient chart initially without having to really search. I can just go to the date of the surgery, find them on the schedule, and get to them that way. I can do document or orders or discharge from here as well, but I don't know how often you would actually be, doing the discharge from this point. But it does take you back to this point, even though I clicked on home, then I click close, and I can go back to my rounds list or whatever else. But that patient, you can see now, is on my recently accessed list. So that concludes the items that I was going to show this morning. There are other questions that are about other things. I'd be open to those. I'm looking at the chat too. Can you show again how you got to surgical cases? Sure. Oh, okay. I'm looking at also these other questions. So recently accessed applies, that's a good question. So it applies for 30 patients, or I believe 10 days is that list that you have in recently accessed. Those are the current settings, is 10 days or 30 patients. Care coordination, can we add, oh, okay. Surgical cases, okay. So I don't, normally it comes up to rounds patients. So it's under show all lists. When you have chosen it once, it will show up in your recent lists. Then I click on that and now it remembers that I went to the grid. Normally, the first time you click, you sign in, it will go to this case list. And this goes by if you are assigned in any way to the patient. So for surgeons who are assigned to that patient, they will actually see cases here. But this provider is not assigned to any patients. So that's where the grid, I come over here to the grid, and that becomes more helpful. Okay. Great. Any other questions? Okay. All right. I will show printing. Is there a COVID status for the widget? That would probably be I would have to work on the COVID status. I can write that down. It would probably be a custom widget or finding that piece of data. So I can look into that. I believe that was Dr. Stone, so correct me if I'm wrong. Now, printing, I'm going to show you a few different ways. And Dr. Kornikavich, I'd be happy to, I know that there's been some questions. If this doesn't answer your question, you can give me a call. Let's go into this guy. And we're going to just print a lab report. It changed. There are some changes that changed in, and this should work no matter where you're at. Okay, so when I do my print icon here, I am recommending, there are two different ways. I recommend that you do the preview because it will right away bring up the report, and you can then, it should print wherever your device is attached. That's how, and I'm in Citrix right now, so I don't know what my printer is, but it should print to whichever printer is attached to my device. The other option, which is, I don't know if this is what's causing the problem, and I can't view it actually through Citrix, is I click on print, I can then click on local, and now again, it should print to whichever printer is associated to my device. But you do have to change it to local from all printers. So I hope that answers your question. The preview is what I think works better because it comes right up. But either way, it should then go to the printer that's associated to your device. So you could do that anywhere in the hospital. You don't have to go to a certain printer. It should work from wherever. And I have tested this when I'm on site. That does make, for those of you who want to print a rounds report, good, a lot easier. We I don't know how many of you do that, but a rounds report used to be, I think, 9 clicks. And so here, if I go to report, so for those of you who haven't done this, this is how you can print a rounds report. I'll start from the beginning. I go to this button that's next to my name and click on report. I've changed this to the 2-line table. I click print, and then I just, my preview, I click OK. The report comes up, and then I can print to wherever I'm at. So that can be done anywhere that you have that device.
Good morning.
Okay.
Get right back if you want.
Yep. Okay.
More questions? I will follow up, Dr. Stone, on the COVID status for a widget. So I will, and I will also follow up on the by sending the standard list of widgets that can be added. How to reach us. I should have maybe made a screenshot. We have 3 people on our team, Shelley Rubo, myself, and B. Eisenhower. And you can call us at extension 6334. We also have a new number that we're kind of going to be getting the word out. We have some business cards we're handing out. We have a number, it's 364-3000. That is actually a direct line from outside. The 6334 is not a direct line from outside. So you can call that. You can also call just 3000, or you can call 364-3000, and that will reach the provider support team. Another option, if just to let you know that if you call and you leave a message on that on that voicemail, we get those voicemails as emails to us. So if we were just away, we can see those right away and we can listen to them and get back to you as soon as possible. So feel free to leave a message, even just to say, please call me. Make sure that you give us that number. Yeah, so that is an option. We do try to always have somebody who is available to answer the phone. Sometimes we are away. And then also you can call the help desk, the IT service desk at 364-2442. That's for like computer problems, but maybe you're not sure if it's a computer problem or a Meditech problem, and they can always transfer you to us as well. If you aren't sure, you can start with them or you can call us directly too. So that's what I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brenda. As she said, if anyone has any questions, feel free to contact them directly and we will send out the information she sends us soon. Thanks a lot.
All right.